Hey y'all, welcome back to New Slang. I am music journalist Thomas Mooney. Hope everyone's week has been going really well. This episode right here is a real treat, and I think all of y'all are going to enjoy it immensely. It's with singer-songwriter Jon Randall. So if I started reading off all the collaborations and co-writes and records that Jon has produced, we would literally be here like the rest of the day. I'll just mention a few of them though. He's co-written songs like Whiskey Lullaby and Tin Man and a bunch of others with folks like Guy Clark and Ashley Monroe, Natalie Hemby. Side note, there's a couple of really great Guy Clark stories in here. He's also produced records for Jack Ingram and Dwight Yoakam and Dierks Bentley, Pat Green and Parker McCollum. And he's worked with folks like Maren Morris, Emmylou Harris, Sam Bush, Lyle Lovett, Vince Gill, and so many more. The list just seriously goes on and on and on. And of course, we touch on a few of these during this conversation. So Jon also has a couple of new projects coming out in the near future as well. He has a new solo album, his first in 15 years. If you haven't yet, go check out the song Keep On Moving. He released it a few weeks back, and for me personally, it's been in that heavy rotation ever since. And then he's part of a little collaboration project with a few folks that you may have heard about. The Marfa Tapes by Jack Ingram, Miranda Lambert, and Jon Randall. It's out May 7th. We talk a lot about this project, his upcoming album, and a ton more, which I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. Let's get on to it. Here is Jon Randall. I guess where I kind of want to start off with is, you just released this new single, Keep On Moving, and it's been 15 years since the last time you released something that was in a form of a record. And of course, this is going to be part of a record of some sort. I know you've had a couple of collaborations between then and there, but for the most part, this is like the next thing that you're doing. And obviously, that 15-year gap, you've been doing a bunch of amazing stuff in between. But for you, like, what was it that made this the right time to do something, under your own name?
I kind of don't know. I can kind of guess with you, because it's just, I'm always making music. I'm always working I work with so many different people. I work in so many different situations and wear different hats. And over the years, I would record some things, because I wanted to record something that wasn't going to be, go on somebody else's record, or, just wanted to record something for myself. And after a few of those songs would pop up where you go, man, I kind of want to just record this and have it recorded. All of a sudden I had enough songs to actually kind of have a project, and I think too, for the last record I did was for Epic Records. I was still at a time where you had to have a label to get anything out there. You had to have some sort of distribution. It was just, now that it's the great Wild West of music right now. And so obviously it was a little bit easier to be able to release something, without having to deal with, a label wanting you to do a radio tour and do all those things, I could still do what I do and put some music out. And also just people around me encouraging me. I would play these things for people, my artist friends that I work with, and people that are just, and family and friends and musical friends and artists, and everybody would be like, man, you should put this stuff out. People need to hear this. So it took a lot of people around me to kind of push me towards doing it, and some really good people in my camp making it happen, because I'm not good with all the logistics and all that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of been a team effort of great support from friends.
Yeah. What's so interesting about that is you talking about kind of having these songs stowed away, if you will, that you didn't necessarily think were going to be cut by someone else. I always find that interesting when, since so much of the music industry right now and forever has been, getting co-writes or outside cuts, and if you look at any of these quote unquote great singer-songwriters from Nashville who have a bunch of cuts under the belt, whenever they put out a record, it's almost like exclusively songs that weren't cut by others. And of course, there's a handful of tunes that are both, but it's almost like they put those songs in their pocket and they're like, these are the songs that I feel I want to get out. Is that
Right.
kind of the same for you right there?
Yeah, it is. And it's really, too, it's songs that I felt like kind of fit the way. I mean, a lot of these, most of these songs I wrote by myself, or if it was a co-writer, it was like, one really close co-writer that we still were writing something that sounded a little more like me. It's like, I kind of had quit thinking of myself as an artist in that traditional sense. But as a writer, I kind of have a point of view. And so it kind of, there were those songs that I was like, I still like the songs that I was writing for myself, by myself in my bedroom at 2 a.m. all those years ago. And when I started finding that guy again, those songs started happening a little bit. So that was also a little bit of that, is that this feels a little bit like my point of view in the way that I want to say things,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why those songs connected with me to kind of keep and let people hear, me doing my thing.
Yeah, because I find like the whole co-writing world to be fascinating as far as like how you get these personalities into a room and create something out of thin air in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I think like the thing that a lot of people don't really necessarily ever talk about is how, as you said right there, you felt like you kind of lost where your voice was as an artist, and that I'm assuming has to do with just kind of writing for other people, or at least like walking into a space knowing that maybe this song is going to be cut for someone else because you're writing with that artist.
Right. Well, like writing with artists, I enjoy that, and I feel like I've written some really great songs, with artists that I've been producing or artists that I've just been writing with, because I kind of know what my job is, and my job is to help them find their language, help them find their point of view, and say what they want to say,
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of go, it's kind of like if everybody in the room knows what the bar is and you all have the same bar and you all think the same thing is good, you'll get there, and when it's working and when it's buzzing and when it's right, some great songs come out of that. Or sometimes somebody will take something you said or you say, and they'll twist it just a little, and you'll go, "Oh, okay, that's even cooler than what I was thinking," And those moments are great. But yeah, there's sometimes you just want to say what you want to say the way you want to say it, and I still love writing by myself sometimes, a lot of the times. It's cool when you have a goal. Like when I was working with Dierks Bentley on his bluegrass record, Up on the Ridge record, we conceptually knew what we needed for that record. And so that was really fun to chase those songs down and try to find what we needed to say in those songs. I loved having that goal. And for me, that's when collaborating is really, really fun.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I think that a lot of times, or not a lot of times, I'll say like sometimes someone will have, most of the pieces of a song together or most of something, and it's almost like they're needing to figure it out. But if you have someone to bounce the ideas off of, that's where all the work can actually happen versus if they were just trying to write it in their minds, if you will. And
Right.
just sometimes like having that other person just to listen and say, yeah, that's needs to go there, or like, nah, I don't know about that part. Not necessarily even thinking in. I guess like what I'm saying is a lot of times I think you sometimes think that when two people enter a room to write a song, that most people think that when you walk out, both people are thinking, "Can I cut that song?" And that's sometimes not the case. Sometimes it's you helping that other person out because like you're just a great listener.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Years ago, I remember playing some songs for Rodney Crowell, and I remember him going, you know, if you said "and" right there, it was like some real simple thing like that. And it was like, if you put "and" right there, then that would change this whole, and it would be like, oh, wow, that twisted the whole course upside down, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like those little things like that, that you're so inside of the way you're seeing it that somebody outside can say something kind of just small and random like that. And you're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. And we need those people around us, you know, that help us get there.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, one of the things that I was reading through, and this is one of those things I was like, oh, I'm going to have to ask you about this, is that you mentioned how, like with a new song, you mentioned the Enneagram 9 thing. And I thought, man, that is super interesting. And so I take it you're a 9. And then do you think that like that actually helps in I guess like understanding what other folks are helps in the relationships of songwriting?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I have a couple of songwriters that, before I had ever really known anything about the Enneagram, and I'm still kind of learning things about it. And I know it's trendy and I know it's the thing right now, but I will say I had some other friends that started learning to identify personalities in a co-write, and learning strengths and how to approach things. And I will say, not as much as a writer, but as a producer, I've really started learning to identify musicians and how to negotiate in a room full of people when you're trying to like when you're like, you know, manning the you're driving the ship, you know. um it has come in handy there, and working with artists too, understanding what number your artist is that you're working with and how to keep the flow going for them. I have been really trying to utilize that in production more so than songwriting, really.
Yeah, no, I love that right there because I mean, even if someone says, I've never, I don't believe in that, if they just take the test, like they'll go, well, there's some truth to that. I mean, like,
Yeah, I
it,
mean there is some, for me anyway. I like when I read through 9, and I'm somewhere in that triad 963. But when I read through it, I was like, oh yeah, ouch, yeah, I do that, don't I? Ooh, ouch, yeah. But you know, I've always. It's funny. Before I ever knew anything about the Enneagram, I've always so many great musicians that I know. They play their instrument like their personality is. I have said that for years. Like really great players that I know, like guys that are eights, just man, they are aggressive and their tone is big and they play really hard, and they drive everybody else on stage to play really hard, you know. And then there's the guys that are the fives and fours that are real introspective, and their solos are super interesting and soft, and you know, it's like I've been for years I've been like, dude, that guy plays exactly like his personality, you know. And and so now that I've been studying the Enneagram, I've been like, oh, okay, yeah, man, that's exactly how that guy plays his instrument.
yeah, I mean, I think like that also just ties into you being able to go, you know, not necessarily manipulate the situation of a producer of a producing a record or anything like that, recording a record, but you kind of it's obviously a tool to help manage personalities and like if someone's in a
Hmm.
bad mood or you know if there's something that's like that's I don't know messing with the mood of the time.
Yeah, just telling somebody, you know, trying to get somebody to change their tone and find their guitar tone, you know, like what's the best way to approach getting him to like change his guitar tone? How do I need to, like, with an 8 you have to go, hey man, your tone sucks, can you like change guitars? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, cool, I got you, you know. But like with other numbers, you're like, hey man, I dig what you're doing, I really do. I'm just curious, what, like maybe like a Les Paul through bassman would sound like, or whatever that, however you need to approach that, so you don't step on somebody's ego.
Yeah, you got to be
It's,
like the Phil Jackson.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's been interesting to just kind of play around with that.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing, and I think there's a lot more artists out there who need to look into that. And I think
Yeah.
there are out there, but maybe they're just not doing interviews about it. But
Well, I know companies use it, and not just Enneagram, but other personality
hmm
studies. I have a friend I won't mention on the company, but it's a huge company, very very successful company, and he told me that they had done personality tests, and then they used that. So if a problem came across his desk, he knew who to delegate that to. Oh, so and so handles that great. So and so knows how to do that really well. Um, and so it really helped their flow with delegating the work around for it, so everybody could use their strongest abilities and their strongest part of their personalities. And I mean, a lot of companies have been doing that for a long time.
yeah,
And I saw an I Love Lucy not too long ago where they were talking about numerology, but they were talking about it like it was the Enneagram.
oh really?
She was like, I'm a 3 and I'm a 1, and they were all naming their numbers. Yeah. Yeah. It's on an I Love Lucy episode. I had to rewind it because I was like, did they just talk about the Enneagram on I Love Lucy? That's really cool.
That's amazing. Um, so have you been doing like can you say like what Jack Ingram is? Do you know like if you're
Oh yeah.
speculating on what he
Oh
is?
yeah. I know exactly what Jack Ingram is. And I even know that he lied on his Enneagram test so that he wouldn't be the number that he knows he is.
Oh, that's amazing right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's funny. He's one of my best pals, man. We've been working on a project with Miranda. I didn't know if you knew about that
hmm
project, but I turned him and Miranda onto it, and she's made everybody in her world take the Enneagram test now because she wants to know what everybody is. So we were on our last trip to Marfa together. She had everybody do the test, and we've been having a lot of fun with that with her as well. And that's when we were giving Jack grief on his number. We were like, no, you lied on your test. There's no way.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've heard a few of the songs off of the Marfa tapes, and that's obviously like, that's to me what I love so much about that is you can tell there's going to be banter in between songs, and I think that is absolutely the coolest thing as far as giving the you know the record a little bit more personality, give it a little bit more context to see what you guys are like in between takes and whatnot. Was that always going to be part of the plan there, or was it one of those
Yeah.
things that just made sense while you were cutting it later on?
Well, no, it really, I mean, that's the thing we went for, was just like, this is just what we do and how we do it. We just turn the tape on. We say tape these days, but we just hit record and start playing, and we agreed to go, hey, there's going to be flat notes. I'm going to play some wrong chords. We might mess a lyric up. Guitars are going to be out of tune because we're sitting around a campfire in the middle of the night in the desert, and but we're just going to let it be that real and raw. And I got to give it up to I mean, it's easier for me to say that, but like, I give it up for Miranda, because she's Miranda, and she's our buddy, and she's as real and honest as anybody I've ever known in my life as an artist. And that's what I love. There's not a lot of artists that would let that happen. You know, there's not a lot of artists that would just say, okay, well, let's go back and do it again, because I don't know if I sounded great on there or whatever. I mean, she sounds great on everything she sings, but I got to give it up to her and Jack both for just going, yeah, let's do it that way. Let's just let this be what it is, and everybody gets to hear it exactly how it goes down, you know. And hopefully people will understand that about that project, you know.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I can't imagine being someone like, especially like Miranda, where obviously she's, you know, a country rock and roll star, and having, I guess, that aspect of going, oh man, you know, I can probably do it better, you know, and I can do it better. And
Mm-hmm.
if you give me the time and just kind of letting loose and letting go of that part of the control whenever you're in control of so much other stuff in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean that's what I love about her, man. She's just bright. I mean, real good, really great artist. I mean, you know this, all these great artists that we're all revere. Oh, so many of them were not afraid. They weren't afraid to fail. They weren't afraid to reinvent themselves. Not afraid to go try something different. Um, that's what I love about her. She's like, once she says, "Okay, let's do this," then it's full on, you know. And yeah, I think that's what makes her special. And Jack too. I mean, Jack's Jack, man. He, you know, you get, you know what you're going to get with Jack. He don't sugarcoat it, you know. And that's what makes him so great in this little trio. You know, he keeps everybody honest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done was with Jack and Bruce Robison a couple of
Oh
years
yeah,
back, and that was such a fun conversation to be part of because in a lot of ways, when you have two people like that, you don't even have to do the talking. You can just
no,
let them talk, and that's where I think a lot of the magic comes from in those kind of conversations. Just asking that
yeah,
one question and letting them figure it out.
yeah. No, Jack is he's a great interview, and he's got so much compassion and passion for music, and that's what I love about Jack, man. And he's one of the people too that really, him and Miranda both really encouraged me to put some music out for that reason. You know, he's so passionate about what I do, which is, you know, is flattering to me because, you know, I respect what he does so much. You know, we've worked on, you know, I produced a couple of his records, and you know, it'd be real easy for me to take on that role of just his buddy that produces his records, you know. But he really pushed me to put this out, and inspired me to like believe in it enough to let people hear it. So he keeps us, like I said, he keeps us all honest.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like now that you mentioned, yeah, I'm thinking about it right here. So like my favorite record of Jack's is that Midnight Motel, and you guys kind of do something on there with Blaine's Ferris wheel, where he does that like he does the story before playing it.
Yeah.
That's in a lot of ways kind of like what's going on here with the new record.
Right. Well, you know, the funny thing about the Blaine's Ferris wheel thing is, so Chad Cromwell was playing drums. Chad's a legendary drummer. Played with Neil Young forever, and played with Dire Straits, and he played out with Joe Walsh, and he's played on a million great huge records. And Chad had come down to Austin to play on that with Charlie Sexton and Bucka, and and he didn't know that story, and I knew I wanted Jack to tell him the story before we played the song, so that he would kind of understand what the song was about since he was playing on it. So I told Brandon Bell, our engineer, I said, "Hey, Brandon, just be rolling because I'm gonna go ask Jack to tell Chad that story, and I'm gonna get it on tape." And so he did, perfect, right on cue, man. We hit record, and I said, "Hey, Jack, tell Chad that story before we play the song," and he told the whole story perfectly. It was great, and then it was like we rolled right into it. I don't think Jack knew we were recording it, you know.
Yeah,
So I love that part of that record, and you realize how well written that song is after he tells the story. You know.
Yeah, no, that's like every time I listen to that song, I listen to that whole intro. You know, it's
Yeah.
just in my opinion, it's like just as much as part of the song as the song itself. So, yeah,
Right.
and like I said, like that's probably like my. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Jack records, but that's probably like my favorite record of his. I just think like the songwriting is just just as strong as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. He was really on his game on all that stuff, and it was it's funny. He and I have said I'm telling you, I can't tell you. I mean, he and I sat on a bus drinking a bottle of whiskey, 2 a.m, listening to the old Willis Allen Ramsey record and listening to Jerry Jeff Walker records and going, man, we need to make a record. Like those guys didn't care. They just turned on record and just started playing. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had that whole, that's the way we saw our heroes making records kind of thing. 2 a.m, just, up drinking and playing. So we talked about it forever. And finally we just, he's like, man, let's do it. Let's make that record. I was like, great. And that every bit of that is live, man. It's all on the floor. You can hear Charlie Sexton clicking his pedals every now and then in the room. If you'll notice, Chad Cromwell's not playing any cymbals. I think there's one song that he snuck in there, but there's no cymbals on the drums, which gave it this really cool dry sound in the room because the vocals were in the room and the cymbals were just going to eat the vocals up because they were all sitting in the same room together. And so I was just pretty proud of Jack for that too, because he just went for live vocals. It's like, yep, just going to sing it live. This is how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fun to make that record. Really, really fun.
Yeah. Well, going back to the Marfa tapes,
Hmm.
was that done all at once, or was that like over the course of a couple of times out there?
We did. I want to say I can't remember. It's 4 or 5 trips that we've done out there. And we wrote a bunch of songs, just a ton of songs, and we had all these little bits and pieces and of them sitting around. And so, what Miranda wanted to do was give everyone kind of the vibe of it. And I don't know if you've seen on like YouTube, there's a little bit of footage of some of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like we want to be everybody to see where we were when we wrote these songs, what the vibe is at that place that we hang out at there. And so we went out there this last trip, and then that's how we record everything. Brandon Bell brought 2 mics. We had a camera guy there to get a little bit of footage, and so we just sat there and recorded it. Just sitting. Some of it's on the tailgate of that Bronco, some of it's sitting by the fire, but none of it's manipulated. It's all just straight up us sitting around in a circle playing guitars and singing, just like the day we wrote them.
Yeah, and of course, like a place like Marfa, out in the middle of West Texas, underneath the stars, that's a very very special kind of place. It creates a certain ambiance and a certain mood.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
important do you think it was that it needed to be in a place in a setting like that versus anywhere else in the world?
Well, the way it all came about was, I've been going down there for a while. It's a long story how I just kind of, in my own way, I know I didn't discover Martha, but for my group of friends and people in my world, I was the first person that had ever gone out there or even known anything was out there. And it was been years ago that I started going out there and just hanging out. I just fell in love with the Big Bend area, everything, stay down in Terlingua and staying down in Marfa and stay up Fort David, all that stuff that's out there. And I can just drive around out there and, for hours and with the window down, love every second of it. And I was always talking about it. And I'm one of those people that if I discover something, I think everybody else needs to know about it, so I'll oversell it. And Miranda was, man, she was going through, a rough patch. She was in all the tabloids, all that crazy stuff was going on in her world. And she called me and she said, I got to get out of here. And she said, why don't we fly down to Midland? Jack's playing a gig in Midland. Let's go pick up Jack and let's go out to Marfa, because you've talked about it and I need somewhere to go. I was like, yeah, there's nowhere better to go. So we just went out there, and, the idea was let's go out there and write some songs, but the idea was also let's go out there and disappear and let's just hide out for a while like a bunch of outlaws, and we did. And that, we just started pouring our hearts out. Everybody was kind of going through one thing or another at that time. And so that first trip, that was the trip we wrote Tin Man. That first trip we wrote like 7 or 8 songs, something like that. Like we just wrote and wrote and wrote. Ended up staying 2 extra days from what we had planned. And her and Jack both just fell in love with it. Like she just couldn't get over it. And so we went back again and it was like, hey, let's go again. And so that's kind of how that all came about, was just running away to get away, and ended up writing some songs. And then when we went back, and I think for Miranda, it was just, gosh, we've got all these songs. The last time we went down and wrote, we sat in the car and we went back and listened to everything we'd written on every trip. And it just, the wheels started turning about, gosh, this isn't like a studio record. This is a record that people need to hear what these songs are about, the songwriters sitting around playing guitars and singing them, And so that's when she decided we should just put it out just like it is. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm originally from Fort Stockton. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I
that area.
Yeah. And I what I like about it is there's a little bit of me that goes, man, I'm glad like somebody else thinks it's cool. Because like forever growing up down there, I didn't think it was necessarily cool, and I didn't necessarily think anyone else was going to think it was cool. And, then moving away, then you kind of go, oh, you know what, that place is actually pretty special. And, in my late teens, early 20s, I basically lived out in Fort Davis during the summers. And, it's just a certain kind
awesome.
of vibe.
Yeah. I remember, growing up, because I grew up in Dallas, South Dallas, and so I'm like a North Texas kid, which is all plains. There's one hill in Dallas, and the Belmont Hotel sits on it. I think that's that one, in the big hill going up I-20, going into Duncanville. Those are the 2 hills. But it's like I used to see that atlas, the Rand McNally atlas, that had I think it had Santa Elena Canyon on the cover. And I remember always seeing that and laughing and going, why did they put like a picture of New Mexico or Arizona on the front of this atlas? Like, it never dawned on me that actually could be something that existed in Texas. I just assumed, oh, that's just like some stock photo, desert photo they put on the cover of Texas, because everybody thinks, we all wear hats and ride horses and live in the desert, like the cowboy movies. So the first time I actually, and I remember we would drive through there on the tour, but I mean, back when I was on the road years ago, I remember, coming through there but it would be always at nighttime, coming through El Paso. I don't remember ever even like noticing that there were mountains in El Paso,
Right.
So it was just funny. Like the first time I went down there and then was like, oh my gosh, like this is beautiful. Like I had no idea that existed. And I was obsessed with it once I got out there,
Oh yeah. I mean, like that's, if you're going out there and you're on, the tour buses going on I-20, you're just stopping in at truck stops and, or I-10, I guess too. And not really ever getting into what the locals do, or how the locals live.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I always say about like Marfa and Terlingua and all that. It's like nobody drives through there. You have to jump off I-10 and go to there and drive, you're trying to get there, or, cause you just don't know it's there unless you research it and realize it's there, or take a back road and find it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool. It's beautiful.
Man, you mentioning the map and pulling out the Rand McNally map, that just put a flood of memories in my head uh, of being a kid and like traveling with my dad. And my dad owned a trailer company in Fort Stockton. We'd have to either go pick up steel in Dallas, or we'd be hauling trailers to New Mexico or Arizona or these small ranches in Texas. And he would always ask me like to pull out the map and, you know, put my two fingers on where we were and like, or where we were around and where we were going, and like, you know, hold it up while he was driving in traffic. And I'm thinking now, like, I don't know if I could have ever done that back in the 90s or even like the early 2000s. Like, we just have
Yeah,
the wonderful technology of just putting it in your phone and going.
I know, man. I think about that a lot too, because when I was growing up in Texas, I was in a bluegrass band all through high school, you know, and we played festivals all over Arkansas and Oklahoma, Louisiana, and South Texas, and little, you know, VFW halls and stuff like that. And man, we were lost without that map. And everybody knew how to read a Rand McNally, you know? Like if you were the co-pilot, you were no good if you were getting car sick, because we needed you to keep your eye on on where that next highway was coming up, you know? It's
Yeah.
just funny to me. I don't even know if anybody, half your listeners probably don't even know what a Rand McNally is.
Yeah. And like you pay attention to like the little numbers by the road, because that's was how many miles.
Yes.
And you, my dad would have me count up these miles between here and there, and it'd be like, okay, well, pull out the calculator. That's also not on the phone, and, and figure out how far we need to go. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
I'm gonna say
Yeah,
that
we
like,
got,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Say that.
Oh, I was gonna
No,
say,
I
oh,
was,
oh yeah, go ahead and
you
say.
got it. No, you got it. I was going somewhere else. You got it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was gonna just comment saying that not all those memories were great. A lot of them were like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
it was my fault for not driving as a 10-year-old. But
Yeah. No, yeah. No, I got you. It was work. It was work. You were working. I get it.
yeah, what direction were you about to go into?
Oh, I was just gonna tell you, me and my manager and a guitar player got lost in Hamburg, Germany one time with my manager driving, and we bought a map to try to figure out where we were going. And it was as big as the inside of the car. It was ginormous, and everything was in German. And we couldn't even find the road we were on the map to figure out where the next road was. It was the biggest epic fail of trying to drive to a gig in Germany. But I just remembered opening that map up, and now I think, oh well, you would have had GPS that would have taken you exactly where you needed to go. You know.
Yeah, that's like a cartoon right there. The map being
Oh, it was,
big as the inside of the car.
yeah, and it was that club that the Beatles played in Hamburg. It's a 39, 36, whatever. Sorry, Beatles fans. I can't remember the name, but it was in the red light district. So every time we'd stop and ask for directions, people would start laughing at us and go, look at these Americans trying to find the red light district. They're lost, asking for directions to the red light district. It's like, no, 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 we're playing. They're like, yeah, right.
Oh, that's good. um, I was gonna ask about this because I'm a big fan, and I mean, obviously, he's from out there too. But you got some rights with Guy Clark, and he ended up cutting some of those songs.
Mhm.
What was it like sitting across a table or across the room from Guy Clark?
The first time was really intimidating. Um, and I knew Guy through Emmy. I mean, it's funny. I've got a really funny story, but it's a very long story about the first time I ever met Guy Clark. It's a crazy story, but years later, I got to hang out with him and Susanna Moore with when I was working with Emmylou, And so I got to know him better. But when he finally said, "Why don't you come over to the house and let's write a song?" I was obviously very intimidated because I was a really young writer, and it was interesting because I kept feeling like, and anybody that might hear this that's written with him will know exactly what I'm talking about. He we would write like little pieces of things, like 2 or 3 lines here, 2 or 3 lines, and then we would think for a long time, and there'd be all these pieces of paper laying on the table with little pieces of lines, and I kept thinking, oh my God, man, we're not going to get a song. He doesn't like what I'm throwing out here. Like I kept feeling like we were not going to get a song. And then he just, takes a big hit off his joint, and he starts piecing all these pieces of paper together. He's like, okay, there's the first 2 lines, and here's the next 2. And it's like he was such a craftsman that's how he wrote songs too, like he was building it. Here you go. That goes there. This goes here. That goes there. Now sing that. That's the first verse. Now sing that. Okay. That's the chorus. And he just like laid it on. And then all of a sudden it was just like, oh my God, we wrote a song. It's all right here. Like we spent all this time, and it was interesting because that's one thing you learn with co-writing with any co-writer, Guy Clark or anybody, is like everybody's process is a little bit different. Everybody's trying to get to the same place, but the way they get there is a little bit different, And and then I was like, oh my gosh, man, we wrote a song, and then it was great once I understood kind of how he worked. I kind of knew how to roll with him when we would write, but he definitely was. I learned a lot writing with him. I learned a lot just about simplicity. He had a handful of rules that I always thought were really interesting, like never make one person better than the other. If it's a breakup song or something, you can never make one person the villain. One of the best lines, and it came when me and him and Gary Nicholson were writing Some Days the Song Writes You. There was a line that he had said that, and I'd give anything to remember this line and Gary would too, but Guy had this line that was a great line, and we were trying every way to shove that line into the song, and it just wouldn't get there. And he just said, well, you know what? Sometimes you got to get rid of the best line in the song to get the song to go where it's supposed to go. And when we pulled that line out, we finished that song in like 30 minutes, And I thought that was a really great lesson about not being too precious with a great piece of poetry if it doesn't belong in that song, in that body of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very understandable to want to keep that in because, if it's the best line. I know like a lot of young songwriters, they maybe also have trouble with keeping a line in just because it sounds cool, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's a tough thing too, because and there are those songs. I mean, I won't lie, I love writing songs sometimes that are a little disconnected because it is a lot of just cool. That's more like when you're writing cool rock stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like you can get away with that stuff, or it's so inside that you're not sure anybody's going to really get what you're saying, but it's kind of cool. But when you're telling a story, you definitely don't want to leave somebody too stranded. Language is a really interesting thing with songs for me. That's what I'm always chasing is, like, I think Steve Earle is a master of telling a story and finding the language to tell that story. It's like if you listen to the way that he tells the story, the character always has a certain way of talking. Delbert McClinton does that too. So does Billy Gibbons. Like those guys come out of that blues world and they have all this cool like vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
That totally is the guy singing, talks like that. And I think that's, to me, that's always the challenge is what's the language that needs to tell this story the best.
Yeah, finding that character's voice as far as like
Yeah.
the way he talks. That's a really interesting thing right there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's a study. I mean, there really is especially there's not a lot of story songs, but when you're telling a story song, which are probably the hardest songs to write, maybe, I don't know, that's probably debatable, but to write them as well as guys like Steve Earle write them is really, um, to me, it's hard to nail that down and make your story make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of probably the way journalism approaches writing something, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm losing my hair, but uh, trying to like figure out that narrative and what you're. I think
Right.
you know what. Maybe this is something that you can relate to, because I find this to be the biggest problem in anything that I ever write about is when I like something so much and I want to say like 10 things about it and I don't know how to begin. I don't know how to like put those in order to say them. And I just kind of want to say them all at once, but there's obviously no way to say that all at once.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like, where do you start? What's the best way to thread this, and then put a bow on it?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. You, one of the things that you said there just a minute ago about Guy, as far as piecing that song together, having those strips of paper out, what that kind of reminded me of was obviously like him being, making guitars and stuff. And that's not necessarily like, it doesn't necessarily mean that he became a better songwriter because he made guitars. But do you think like that had an impact on his songwriting or his approach to songwriting, to art?
Well, possibly, and I think Sean Camp and Verlin and Daryl's probably spent a lot more time writing with him than I did. I know they did, but I always perceived that was Guy's personality, and not to go to the Enneagram thing, but I'm just saying he he played and wrote songs and like a craftsman. He was a painter. He was meticulous about building guitars. He was meticulous. I mean, watching him roll a cigarette, he was meticulous about rolling a cigarette. His joints looked like cigarettes. They were perfect, So it's like he was like that. And so I think with his songwriting, he was like that as well. It was they call it a craft, and to Guy, it was a craft. I mean, he crafted a song the way that he did everything else, and to me, that's all connected. Just from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I find that really, really interesting as far as what, because I think a lot of times, especially now, a lot of songwriters just think of themselves as songwriters or as musicians, and there's a lot of artists who do other things, and they may not be as good at painting or or building guitars or writing a screenplay or whatever the case is as they are as at writing songs. But I think that sometimes that way of thinking limits what they're capable of doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. It's funny. I have a friend that it's a massive hit songwriter. The guy's written just, I don't know, at 30 number one hits or something. But he's also a bass fisherman, tournament fisherman. And if people ask him, go, what do you do? He tells them he's a tournament fisherman. and he means it, but he's also like one of the biggest hit songwriters that ever wrote songs, you know. And I love how it's like you can have a couple of things in your world, but what are you the best at? I guess is what you're asking, right? Like what are you what pushes you to be the best at what you do?
Yeah, well, but I think those other things can help make you a better whatever that is,
Yeah, no. Yeah, you're
because
right. I got you.
it's one of those things where like just seeing it from a different approach maybe, or I think a lot of times it's maybe that time that um, not I hate to put it as in like you're on an autopilot, but like when you're just able to think about stuff versus where you're really writing that song out or whatever the case, you know. I think like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people think of songwriting as only when you pick up that pen and the guitar or sit down at the piano. And, you know, a lot of times art comes way before that. The process starts way
Oh,
earlier.
right. No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and you might even, yeah, and the things you do just in your daily life, you know, being a great listener or just hanging out with people or sitting in a bar and you can hear somebody say something, and that sparks an entire thought process for you that eventually you take into a writing room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's funny to have a friend that is just one of the most badass guitar players that ever played a guitar. And and there's a mechanics, you know, he's big into golf and the mechanics of golf, and he relates that in the way that he approaches playing, and he's just a master at his instrument. But it's interesting because it's like it's the opposite of Jerry Garcia, which is just kind of loose, and he's incredible too, you know. And but it's loose and it finds its way, and he just kind of he's looking for it, and he's you know free forming, and Willie's kind of that way too, you know. And it and I find it interesting because maybe that's like you said, it's like the way that you approach other things in your life or what you bring into your art as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, this one kid from Texas that you know really well, Parker McCollum. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I feel like uh, obviously that last EP is really, really great, but to me, what I see a lot in that EP is some of those like early promises that you saw in his early work. You just see like I guess some of those roots or those seeds where you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, oh man, he's gonna be able to do something. This is cool, but like there's gonna be something cooler ahead. And I think like Hollywood Gold is at least the beginning of that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, man. You know, I kind of Randy Rogers and Ben Vaughn at Warner Chapel and Jesse Vaughn at Warner Chapel kind of introduced Parker and I think we didn't know each other, but I know. I mean, I knew what was going on with him, and I think he knew of my work as well. And I think everybody kind of put us together because they felt like we would get each other, and they felt like, you know, he's about to do a thing in Nashville, and I'm a Texas guy, and I've worked with all those guys, but I also know how to navigate my way around the music row thing and dealing with labels and how to help him make the kind of thing he needs to make that can, you know, get to a bigger platform without losing any of our roots, you know, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big thing to, it's, I mean, it's a lot of weight on my shoulders to take that on because I know his audience. I know my Texas people. I know where he's coming from. And he is such an artist. He's such a great writer. His thing does not need to be messed with at all. And so that's why I wanted to be really careful about where we went on this, you know, this project. And really and truly, man, just you know, all we're trying to do is what I try to do when I'm working on a record, any record, is what is it conceptually? I'm not saying like let's make Pink Floyd The Wall, but when I say conceptually, sound wise, what band do we need in there? What group of cats do we need in there? What's our anchor song, and then how do we build off of that sound so that we're not just throwing stuff at the wall? And that's kind of that's been kind of our challenge is, you know, navigating the way that Nashville does things and the way that we like to do things, you know. And I think we're on it. I appreciate you saying that about Hollywood Gold because I feel like it's a great body of work for him, and we're just trying to keep that going, just trying to keep that momentum and that that sound and finding out what that sound is for this project, and he's great. I mean, that's the thing is I really been begging, and he's smart. He's got it, and he gets it. But it's like, I always say, what if when the first time someone heard Bruce Springsteen, they said, well, hey, let's get him in Nashville and make him write with all these hit writers, what would have happened? So it's been, I think we've all kind of done a good job at, like, let's just make sure Parker is Parker, and let's just capture it without messing with it too much. And so, and a lot of it was too, I watched his live shows, and wanted to kind of build off that, what his band is live and what that sound can be live. How can we translate what we're going to do here that's kind of the same instrumentation as what you're doing, because that's a sound, so but I love working with him. He's just a fantastic artist and a great guy to be in the studio with.
Yeah, I think that, like, a lot of times folks can dismiss Parker just because he's a good looking guy and got that Nashville record label deal and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And not realize that, the guy actually also knows a lot about great music. And he, I've had conversations with him about Rodney Crowell, and like, him being kind of a diehard when it comes to Rodney Crowell records. And, you can't get any more real than Rodney Crowell,
No, man, Parker's roots are really deep. I mean, he was singing a Jerry Lee Lewis country song to me the other day. I think he did it on the Opry the other night. Like, and I love that about him. Most new artists would never do that. I mean, I don't know a new artist that would walk out there and sing, what was the 39 Holding Everything You Can, whatever he sang, that Jerry Lee Lewis song. Just country is, dirt. And that's what's going to make him a great artist. That he's not afraid. He's not afraid to do that stuff. He wasn't afraid to work on a record in Nashville, and he's not afraid to tell Nashville, hey, this is the kind of record I'm going to make, So let's keep rooting for him. We need him.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some Texas guys right now that are doing some cool things that are all in that age gap, that age range, and they're gonna they've all made stuff in Nashville the past year or so, and yet they're still gonna have that identifiable voice that made them, be famous or popular or whatever, be on notice in the first place. So I think it's a good thing.
Well, most of them are working with fellow Texans up here. I mean, that's the thing you got to realize. There's a bunch of guys up here from Texas that are producing records, and working with our buddies back home. So we're kind of infiltrating it a little bit.
Okay, so I got a question to ask about that then specifically. Yeah. So one of my buddies was telling me about, I guess he had moved up to Nashville, and within that first month or so, he had been reading like the Billy Joe Shaver biography or something. And he was saying how back then all the Texas guys ran together, and all like the Georgia guys ran together, and all the whatever pockets were, like you just ended up like hanging out with those people where you're from, even though you are all in Nashville. And if maybe you were back home, you would have been doing the exact same thing. Do you feel like there's some truth to that too, as well as not necessarily that, you're not going to hang out with anyone from any other state, but that there's a little bit of that comfortability with just knowing that, oh, this guy's from Texas too?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny too, because, man, you know how Texans are. We find it, man. I'm serious. We'll find each other in a crowd. And it's true. The Georgia guys they have their crew of people and everything, but Texans seek each other out, and we kind of look after each other. Like somebody comes to town that's new, it's like, okay, hey, buddy, here's the deal. Here's how this rolls up here. If you need me, you call me. Like, we kind of find each other, and it's kind of cool, really. But yeah, we all hang. I mean, it's I moved here. I moved to Nashville in 1987, and part of the reason I came up, well, one was because a buddy of mine that had moved up here had us a gig lined up, and so I came up to check that out and kind of hang out with him. But I was a bluegrass kid mostly, and there was a handful of us bluegrass kids that all moved up there because Ricky was there. Jerry Douglas, Sam Bush, Bela Flick, all the Newgrass Revival guys. Like, the Station Inn was the famous bluegrass joint. So if you're a bluegrass guy, you kind of were going to go there, North Carolina or DC area, or go out to the West Coast and play hippie grass. That was kind of your options for that. Mm-hmm. But also, Guy was in Nashville, Towns was in Nashville, Steve Earle was in Nashville, Rodney was in Nashville, Delbert was in Nashville, Lyle was making records here, Nancy Griffith had moved up. Like, everybody, so many of those guys before me moved to LA, and then they moved to Nashville. Like, Guy moved to LA, Towns moved to LA, Delbert moved to LA, Gary Nicholson moved to LA, and then everybody moved to Nashville, And so I think it's because there wasn't the same kind of scene, that blew up, like when Jack and Pat and all the Bruce and those guys, all that was happening. That happened after I'd already moved up this way. So part of it was, I thought that's what you did. That's where it was going on. I mean, if Guy's there and Towns is there and all the bluegrass guys are there, Emmylou Harris is there, and that's the crew of people I want to be hanging out with, and that's what I did. Was I moved to town and I found all those people, it was like, okay, who's the people I want to hang out with? And that's kind of what the scene was when I got here too, was that crew was all hanging out together, and Billy Joe was up here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember there was this cool little funky bar that would stay open way after hours, and you could stumble in there at like 4 a.m, and Guy and Phil Kaufman and Prine and Towns, everybody was hanging out down at this little hole in the wall when I moved to town, and it was just kind of cool to see those guys,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of those things that maybe I don't know, like kids these days, and I say kids, including myself, don't necessarily realize is that, like, there was not necessarily the infrastructure here in Texas to support a scene where you could travel and tour, quote unquote, tour Texas back then. That took a lot of, years of kind of getting some radio and getting bars and gigs that you could play that are smaller than Billy Bob's, or something like that. Where I remember talking with Wade Bowen about how one of the things that he thought kind of put him ahead was that he had his own PA system, and that, like, so many of these places in Texas you could play, but you had to bring your own PA and you had to bring your own equipment and, like, sound. You had to hire the sound guy out to run the sound on your stuff, and how just being able to have that was just a little bit of an advantage to being able to play around town and around Texas.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can totally see it. I mean, that's how it was playing when I had a bluegrass band back home. Is like we had a banjo player that had a PA system and a van, mm-hmm. and we could go set up on a flatbed trailer at a county fair and play, and we were kind of self-contained. So I can totally see that. But I think for some of our heroes, for Guy, I mean, I know that part of the deal was he got a publishing deal in LA, and they were like, well, you can move to New York or Nashville. We'll pay you $75 a week or whatever it was, something like that. And I think Christofferson was like, he was in Nashville still at the time, and he was like, man, you got to come to Nashville. They're loving hippie poets here right now, and so that's how he ended up going from LA to Nashville, was, just trying to make money writing songs at that point. I don't know. I'm not even sure he was making records yet. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, that was kind of the deal. Was when I moved to town, that was the way it was. Like that whole crew was running together, and so you try to figure out where those guys were hanging out, and that's where you would want to go hang out. And it was usually, and you didn't want to try to keep up either. That's the other thing I found out the hard
way. How do you, I hate to say the word infiltrate, but how do you even break into like meeting one of those guys like back then when you're, just a kid essentially?
Well, for me, I mean, I kind of skipped the line because, when I was 20, I guess I just turned 21 when I joined Emmylou Harris's band. And so I got to hang out with all those people when I was really young. And so that's kind of how I got there was, just through, we played gigs with all those cats, and, Emmy had hangs at her house, Super Bowl parties and New Year's Eve parties. And she'd have, Guy and Susanna and Jim McGuire and Harlan Howard and all those guys would be over at her house hanging out. So I kind of got in early on that. Now I did meet Guy. I told you I wasn't going to tell this story, but basically I met Guy when I was 19. It was my first gig when I moved to Nashville. I was playing with Holly Dunn, who was, I think she was out of San Antonio. She had a deal on Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. And we went to Europe, and I don't know how I ended up hanging out with Sonny Curtis at 19 years old and trying to keep up drinking wine and whiskey with those guys. But it didn't end well. But basically, Guy walked off stage. We were watching Guy, and he walked off stage, and he didn't know me from Adam, but he just looked at me, and I had my guitar, and he goes, "Let's go pick." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to get to go pick with Guy Clark, and Sonny Curtis." So I grabbed my guitar, and Guy goes, "Where's your room?" And I go, "Well, it's over at that little hotel." And he goes, "All right, let's go." So we start walking through this little village across the street to this hotel. And on the way, he picks up Billy Joe and Eddie Shaver, Steve Young, and Johnny Rodriguez. And and then about 20 other people. And we come piling to my room, and I'm rooming with our drummer. And bless his heart, he was in bed. And Guy opens the door, flips the light on, and goes, "Get up, we got to move those beds." And so my drummer, God love him, man, our drummer has to get up. He's getting his clothes on while these people are pouring into the room with coolers and wine bottles. And he tips the beds up against the wall, leans them up from the bottom up against the wall, and starts rearranging the furniture so that we can all sit in a circle and play songs. Well, by this point, I'm on my balcony throwing up off the balcony. And I missed the entire party. Like all these guys in my room, like all these legends in my room. And so what's funny is fast forward like years later, we're sitting around at Emmy's house, and Guy starts telling that very story. Because we were talking about Eddie Shaver. And he starts telling that very story, but he doesn't realize that it was me. So, and at some point, I'm just listening to him tell the story from his point of view. And it was exactly how I remembered it. And he goes, "Yeah, and I don't know who that poor little son of a bitch was, and whose room it was. He was out there throwing up off the balcony all night, but that was a hell of a night we had with Billy Joe, blah, 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 blah." and I was like, "Hey, Guy," I said, "that little son of a bitch throwing up off the balcony was me." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." And that was one of our funny things forever, because it blew his mind that was actually me, that was the guy he remembered. Didn't know who that kid was, but that was kind of our fun story for a long time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know, man. And I look back, though, I tell you what, I think back and I go, there was a real blessing in that, because my songs were not good enough to play in front of those guys at that point in my life. Like, I think back at the couple of songs that I would have played then, and I would have been cringing right now if I told you I sat and played those songs in front of Billy Joe and Guy Clark. I'm so glad that I was not capable of playing any music for those guys.
I'm so glad you told that story.
Yeah, that was crazy funny. But that was the thing, man. As I kind of got pulled in just because I was hanging with Emmy at such a young age, and that kind of, she introduced me to a lot of people, a lot of my heroes, and we played a lot of gigs with, we play those festivals, and that's kind of where you really make friends with a lot of people, or those big festivals. You get to hang out with a lot of people at one time,
Yeah, I've noticed that as far as like being able to go to like Luck Reunion a couple of times, and during South by, where the numbers are low, but like the artist numbers are high because of how many people are playing, and backstage it's a little bit low key as far as the who's who, but like everyone's relaxed, and you can just tell that people are actually having conversations and not just like doing the flyby.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the crazy thing about our business too, is like some of the people I'm probably closest to are people I don't see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We would see each other, we all live in the same towns, but it's like we don't see each other till we're at a festival hanging out for 3 or 4 days and getting up on stage and playing music together. And there's an interesting camaraderie in that, and it's an interesting way that we have friends here, but that's kind of how it works, and some of the people I consider to be some of my closest friends, I don't really see that much, But when I do, it's fun. We have a lot of fun and play a lot of great music.
Yeah, you gotta have to take them all to Marfa.
Oh my gosh. I'd move down there tomorrow if I could. If there was enough places to work down there, I would.
Oh, I know that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. Man.
But yeah, I think that'll be a good spot to end it on right there.
Okay, I hope I gave you something you can use, man.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I just don't want to...
I can be random.
No, I just don't want to take up, 3 hours of your time or something. All right, that is it for this one. Big thanks to Jon Randall for taking some time. Be sure to check out the Marfa Tapes coming out May 7th, his upcoming solo record. There isn't a date announced just yet, but it's coming pretty soon. And yeah, I'll see y'all next week for more new slang.